What's up, buddy people? Hi. My name's Chris, and I'm a bookaholic. This is the simple truth. I've been sick and finishing that up, thankfully. And I wanted to highlight a couple books a little bit more than I have in the past. So if I've brought these up, then just know I'm going to try to unpack it a little bit more. Here's the first book I want to talk about. This is a compilation of books by Michael Moorcock. They put these collections together, the Elric Saga, Volume 1, and there are a couple other volumes. But in this, and I've already listened to one of the books, they have 4 books, and maybe you can see those. I feel like reading Rainbow. Your elementary school teacher reading to class. Elric of Melniboné, Book 1, which was phenomenal. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm on The Fortress of the Pearl, and number 3 is The Sailor on the Seas of Fate, and finally, Book 4 here, The Weird of the White Wolf. In a lot of ways, every time you hear someone talk about Michael Moorcock, it is with almost a sense of reverence. His impact on the genre, not just of fantasy, is world-renowned. He's been credited, which I think he's deflected a little bit, with coming up with the concept of the multiverse. Whether that's true or not, neither here nor there, his impact is felt and seen. Once you start reading any of these, you're going to start recognizing characters that are pretty famous already, maybe now on the forefront more than ever, such as The Witcher, that albino, seemingly unfazed, unbeatable warrior. This guy, though, Elric, is in some ways physically depicted very similar to The Witcher, at least to me. Maybe for some of you it doesn't seem to translate. But what I love about this character here, Elric, is that he's weak and he's flawed. And there's a challenge, an invitation for him, especially near the end of that first book. What will he allow himself to become, And so, without giving too much away, simply put, Elric has not been ruling Melniboné in the way that others have before. I don't remember if they call them Melnibonéans, but there's some frustration and, of course, some conflict to the point where there is someone who's trying to take the throne from him. There's some decent, kind of love interest moments, but it's certainly not oppressive and is not necessarily a romance at all. And there's some great battle moments, but it's not necessarily even a battle-driven story. Like what you have here is a legendary epic character, and you're following him on the journey, watching him become fully what it is that he's meant to be. And these quests and these adventures kind of allow for him to make some decisions, and specifically even some decisions on what does revenge look like, and what does it look like to be a leader, and what kind of a leader does he want to be. And I think because he's reading a lot and because he's exploring and trying to understand what it means to be a leader, he's calling into question certain traditions and heritages, histories that people are not ready for him to implement. And there's a number of different things that take place, especially in that first book, that kind of bring who he is a little bit more to the forefront. But I think it's the final scenes, especially when it comes to the implementation and the use of I'll just say of the weapon, that you begin to see that Elric is going to be a worthy hero. So I loved it. I loved the first book. I'm listening to it on audio, and the second book is already starting out with quite an amazing adventure. and I don't think it's necessarily a spoiler, but at the end of the first book, what you realize is, as much as he has this great love, he is determining to understand what his kingdom could and should look like, and the decisions that he makes to do that are going to put him on a variety of paths that are different. And so that's why we're going to get all these stories. But if you've never read this, it's a great classic story, and you're going to find yourself thinking, wow, I feel like that reminds me of something. And the reason that it does is because, well, people are using his gifts to their advantage. It's certainly not overt necessarily stealing, but it's stealing. It's no, imitation is best form of flattery. There's a lot of flattery going on out there. There's another book right now that I'm in the process of finishing, and I'm enjoying this. I started this a while ago, and I really enjoy it because I like Drew Hayes. This is kind of that whole idea of non-playing characters suddenly, almost seemingly accidentally being pushed to the forefront and becoming playing characters. And I have to say that I don't like this as much as I like the Fred the Vampire Accountant, but I am enjoying this. And I think partly what I'm enjoying about this is watching, again, the characters come into their own. I think that's a big thing for me. I like watching character development. I like to see, who the people were and who they're becoming, and sometimes it's fascinating even to watch how an antagonist becomes such a vile creature, and why are they so antagonistic, and why is there so much animosity. But I am enjoying this. This is a good, just fun read, and so we'll see. But I should hopefully finish that sometime before I die. Okay. I'm not driven, let's just say that, but I am picking it up, and partly maybe today, if I could plow through it, that would be nice for a little reading thing I'm a part of right now. So we'll see. Another book that I have not started, but I intend to get going on, is the fourth installment of Fred the Vampire Accountant. Look, these are ridiculously funny and good. In a lot of ways, for me, I think that there's something about this that resonates, and it has a similarity to even Jim Butcher, who's one of my faves. It's not that there's this similar kind of plotting and or even world. It's very different than the way that Jim Butcher puts his Dresden Files together. But I think what I'm liking about this, and what works for me, is this kind of integration of characters that Fred finds himself leaning on, depending on, and even people who were at first maybe at first antagonistic towards him, or even at odds with him, then somehow become aligned with him, and so it's somewhat of it's a slow reveal, and it happens over a series of books, and I love it. But each, in and of itself, gives you an incredible story. But not just that, there is something about the way that Drew Hayes builds on each of these stories. So if you were, like I am, obsessed with kind of going in order, it really helps. It makes the series just pop. And while each, in and of itself, is a phenomenal story, what is making this beautiful is the way that they all work together. And I think that's one of the things about Drew Hayes that's similar to Jim Butcher and the Dresden Files, is that yes, the one-offs of the books are great, and in truth, some could be not as great, or some could be phenomenal, but as a whole, the reason the Dresden Files, I think, are so awesome is the way that they all work together, and you keep building and having familiar characters, and you see all of their development, and it's amazing. And I think that's happening here, and my only frustration is I think there's only 8 books. I will be so upset when it's done. And I think Andrew over there at the Wizardly Reads has read them all and interviewed Drew Hayes. So I would recommend watching that. I love that. Maybe one day if I get my act together, I can get him to allow me to interview him. And because we brought him up, Jim Butcher. Look, I love Jim Butcher. I've read all of his Dresden Files, and I've read a number of that, the Codex Alera, but I've not read this yet. And he just published a short story in this series, and then the second book is coming out. So I need to get my act together. And I don't know. I think maybe I'm worried about, and this is maybe unnecessary, but is that it's just going to be, I think what I'm worried about is I'm not 100% sure I'm a steampunk fan, and I've heard this is likened to steampunk. And so I need to get over it and just make the decision for myself if I like it or not, you know. But I love this copy, and actually I'm a fan of this illustration. I'm not really liking the way that this second book is looking. If you've seen some of the imagery pictures, it's a little weird. I mean, maybe it's a little bit more current in terms of certain publication trends and covers, but I'm not digging it. I think it's a departure from obviously what is meant to be a decent series. So yeah, who knows? The final book I'm going to talk about is a book I'd like to read that I've had for a while. I first heard about this from Patrick, and it's called The Helm of Midnight. Now, I've heard this is a little bit of a, I don't know if it's kind of like a serial killer-esque or some sort of a mystery in a fantasy world, but I definitely, I'm trying to figure it out for what I want to read during the Halloween spooky season, if you will. This might work, but I don't know. The only person I've really heard talk about this is Patrick. I don't know if Andrew read this or not, but there it is. So anyways, that's a few books that are on my radar, things that I'm reading, things that I'd like to read, and thanks for tuning in. So a little bit more chill, a little bit more slow pace, a little bit more, I think what I'd like to do. Sometimes I feel like in the past, some of my videos, which I've loved, just are quick flybys, and that's okay. I think I like the idea of diving a little bit deeper, or at least talking a little bit more about what I'm enjoying and what I'm feeling, experiencing as I read through and explore these books. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you loved it. I love this stuff, and I hope you do too.